and then to shut down our free speech altogether. So that was again in evidence at Bilderberg, with Microsoft, Facebook, Google, all of them in attendance to discuss this.
Yeah, and in fact, the official BilderbergMeetings.org website leaked a very small agenda. We can only sort of read between the lines and match it up with the more detailed agenda that came out from moles and leaks inside. But let me just read those topics. Challenges for growth, innovation, and budgetary discipline. The euro and challenges for the European Union. Obviously, we know they're very concerned about the fall of Greece and what it's going to mean for the rest of the European Union. The role of emerging economies, conflict areas. If that isn't a euphemism, they just simply say conflict areas, as nearly the whole region falls into flames, Paul. They also have demographic challenges about the growing Mideast population and the declining Western populations, demographically speaking. China is on the list with no detail at all, Paul. Are they looking at war or peace or just simply the treasury bond issues? They were also concerned about Switzerland. Can it remain successful in the future? We talked a lot about that, but they're very angry still that Switzerland remains neutral and sovereign and refuses to adopt their euro and European Union, even as that begins to fall, Paul. And they've really just declared an unsafe haven for sovereign countries in the 21st century. So, of course, they want Switzerland. But they also talked about new challenges in the Middle East, as well as social networks, connectivity, and security issues. Just everything shows they're gearing towards this, and they've been covering that agenda for years now, Paul. Last year in Spain, June 2010, they had a topic called social networking from the Obama campaign to the Iranian Revolution. And if that doesn't underscore quite a bit of everything that's happening in the Middle East, I don't know what does. And they've been concerned also for years about the growing influence of cyber technology. And they've had on people not only like Bill Gates and the Facebook founder, but Craig J. Moondy of Microsoft. They've got a managing partner of the Founders Fund. They've got Eric Schmidt of Google, Peter Thiel, who's on the Bilderberg Steering Committee and is also the PayPal executive and really intimately involved with Facebook to boot, as well as nanotech and future stuff. But then they also have Christine Varney, Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust, Paul. So you can see where they're clamping down on camera use in the U.S. Because of supposed copyright issues. You might be at a concert trying to bootleg copyrighted music, but at the same time, they're covertly sponsoring revolutionary groups using these new medias, Paul. We've kind of covered that, but it's important.
Well, yeah, and also we had the presence of Peter Mandelson, who was, of course, behind the Digital Economy Act of 2010 in the UK, which was very similar to some of the cybersecurity laws that they're now pushing through in the US, which is about basically declaring everything as copyright and pursuing people, going after people on the flimsiest of pretexts for this copyright violation. Of course, now YouTube says that if they get a request from the government, they don't investigate it, they get a request to remove content, they immediately remove it. And that's what happened in Britain with the recent protest of the council tax with the whole Freeman issue up there in Birkenhead, and it's the same in the United States. YouTube is now removing content, not even for copyright, just via government request. So you had Mandelson there, who was this big player behind censorship of the internet in the United Kingdom last year, also attending Bilderberg. But you also mentioned the European Union, which of course was a topic of discussion at last year's meeting in Spain. And again, in the very days after this year's conference, it's become very apparent that Bilderberg's goal to prevent the breakup of the European Union is very much failing. It's on the ropes, because this Greek debt situation is just going to drag on. And it exposes the fact that this system of regional currency blocks, which is ultimately planned to become the global currency, is only ever as strong as its weakest member. And in fact, you had Bilderbergers writing in the Financial Times beforehand and after that if they don't rescue this Greek debt situation, if Greece defaults on its debt, it could spell the end for the euro and eventually the plan for a global currency, with the EU member states returning to their own nominal national currencies. But according to the information leaked from inside this year's Bilderberg Group conference, the globalists are going to try to make lemonade out of lemons by pushing through what is being called, quote, a massive power grab that would give the EU itself the authority to punish countries that don't follow its strict economic mandate. So they want to create this EU Ministry of Finance to prevent another Greece situation from threatening the cherished stability of their Eurozone. So we're basically talking about a central economic government with executive powers that would cover the whole of Europe. Any economic sovereignty of individual member states would be crushed. It would cease to exist. So our tax money as Europeans would go directly to this centralised planning committee who would then decide how to spend it, which is no surprise given the fact that the president of the EU, Herman Van Rompuy, who was there in St. Moritz last week, was picked for that very position by Bilderberg after a Bilderberg dinner in 2009, one of these offshoot groups, because he advocated an EU centralised tax that we would all pay, an additional tax, to fund the EU. So they want to exploit this Greece situation. They not only want to rescue it, but they want to exploit it to create this centralised economic dictatorship, which would directly tax all EU citizens to fund the beast system, the European Union itself.
Wow. It's really one of those situations of global solution out of the global crisis. They started the whole thing. They were ahead of most of the banks that got bailed out, especially in Europe. And they've really set it in motion. So the Greek was forced to confront this debt situation. We have Pop Andrew reconfiguring the Greek government this week and preparing to step down. He's a Bilderberger. So are a lot of the main financial ministers. And we have Ednier Davignon writing in 2009, really kind of acknowledging tacitly how they started or set in motion or let fall this economic crisis, but that it was a little bit out of control even after 1 year. The austerity protest alone threatening their ability to consolidate on the exact kind of global and European-based centralized solution that you were just describing, Paul. Can you go more into that?
Yeah, basically the whole European economic system emerged out of the steel and coal system post-World War II. And in the 1955 Bilderberg archives, you can see where individual members advocate not only a European economic community, which eventually became the European Union after the Treaty of Rome in 57, but also a single currency, the euro. And this was over 50 years before it actually came into being. So it's their baby, it's their brainchild. That's why they're so desperate to rescue it. Last year in Spain, they said, we need to save the euro, it's going downhill, and that was at a time when it was around 1.19 to the dollar. They managed to prop it back up again to the point of, 1.40 against the dollar, which is where it is now. But this Greece debt situation is still rolling on. You had an emergency meeting last month with the finance ministers there. Der Spiegel reported on it at the time. So they're petrified that this
Paul,
Greek
we're going out to break, but we're going to get right back into the stuff on the other side and even more detail into how they're managing the geopolitical crisis, the euro crisis, and the larger financial situation for simply greater global control. I'm Aaron Dykes sitting in. This is Infowars.com. Stay tuned. Coming up, Bob Chapman. We're back live again on the Alex Jones Show. Alex is still away on that story. I'm still Aaron Dykes sitting in, and we still have Paul Joseph Watson. Other people are also coming up in the broadcast. We've got some of the eyewitnesses to the 2011 St. Moritz Bilderberg meeting, some of the stories and things we saw there, different encounters. Each year there's always a new kind of mini setup, being chased by police or some kind of mini harassment going on. There was plenty of that going around in 2011. We'll get into some of that. Of course, among the things fresh in the news today, Greek debt crisis. Billions more will be pumped in to rescue Greece. Obviously, they're concerned about that, what that will mean for the euro. Also coming up later in the broadcast, I believe we're going to have a few of the minutes of Alex Jones' speech for Talkers Magazine. Guess who's coming to keynote? Alex gave that speech last Saturday over the weekend while we were in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and we're going to find out what he had to say about the growth of alternative media, which obviously the Bilderberg Group, among others, are concerned about as citizen activists take to the streets everywhere, as people in Europe say no to austerity measures, and so much more. Paul Joseph Watson's article today, Globalists Want Permanent Occupation of Iraq, just more dreadful, deadly news for the World War III scenario that's still unfolding, with 3 and 4 wars underway and hitting that number 5 with Libya as well as the bombings in Yemen. Obama and the powers that be have not said, let's end the war in Iraq, as he insinuated and promised during the campaign, but instead they want a permanent occupation of Iraq. We already knew that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Maybe I'm too far up in the years, but Paul Joseph Watson, break down this article and break down what they're really doing with the destabilization campaigns in the Middle East, please.
Well, obviously Obama campaigned on the promise to withdraw all U.S. troops from Iraq immediately. We had this fake withdrawal last year in August where thousands of private security were left behind, and in fact 46,000 U.S. combat troops were left in Iraq. So we've had the date for withdrawal pushed back every single year since George W. Bush declared mission accomplished in May 2003. And now, according to the chatter coming out of the Bilderberg conference last week, they're talking about exercising some form of squatters' rights in order to keep these U.S. troops in the country. Of course, there are numerous U.S. military bases. They need to be staffed. This is going to be a launch pad for the wars against Libya, Syria, Iran, and everyone else in the region. So according to these leaked chatter from the moles inside the Bilderberg group, the quote was that the U.S. had no intention of ever leaving Iraq, that the occupation would be permanent. One European delegate commented that, quote, it is anyone's guess when U.S. troops will finally be withdrawn, suggesting that this December 31st, 2011 deadline is complete baloney, just like the last one was. And in fact, another U.S. Bilderberger said, quote, when you think of Iraq, think big. So again, the troops are going nowhere. They're going to use Iraq as a launching pad for a new war against Syria, Libya, and everyone else. And it's basically, you know, more of the same. Obama campaigned on getting troops out. More troops are deployed, more U.S. troops all over the world under Obama compared to George W. Bush. And Bilderberg have had a direct hand in what happens in Iraq right from 2002, as Jim Tucker reported, when they delayed the start of the war.
All right, Paul, this is the short break. We're going to be back just on the other side, and there's a lot more to cover, obviously. So Infowars.com, stay tuned. In the second hour, coming up in just about a minute here. We are back again live this Friday, June 17th. I'm Aaron Dykes sitting in while Alex is away. We're now into the second hour. We've been with Paul Joseph Watson. Coming up, of course, is Bob Chapman, economic expert and total guru. He's going to have a lot of insight, I'm sure, on everything going on in Greece and what it means for Spain, Portugal, Ireland, and the United States. What day will the U.S. get its first IMF loan? We also want to give out the phone number. We want to get your take. It is open phones, but at the same time, with World War III looming, with the European crisis really in the balance right now, I'd really like to hear something relevant from you other than just ancient history. But the number is 1-800-259-9231, 1-800-259-9231. We're going to get to your calls in a few minutes and throughout the rest of the broadcast. We're also going to talk to Bilderberg insider Alex Benesch, outsider actually, witness to the events along with us in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Witness also to some of the being chased by police on the mountains and the other adventures in high parts of the world. But Paul Joseph Watson, just to bring us back into discussion, I'm looking at a document from 2008, October 30th, 2008. Rand Corporation lobbies Pentagon start a war to save the U.S. economy. Back in 2008, they discussed bringing up a World War III scenario that could even involve China, Russia, or even Japan, simply to bolster the U.S. economy. What do you think about that, Paul?
Well, that's interesting because it came straight out of Chinese state media, which is basically the voice of